Hello, AACPS staff, and welcome to the November 2022 vodcast brought to you by the Office of Instructional Technology. My name is Tracy Brown, and this month we're going to talk about the lost art of the pull tab. We're going to revive an old smart notebook favorite trick from our teachers for our new Smart Lumio generation. So, first off, what exactly is a pull tab? Well, a pull tab is just a trick that teachers use to hide information off the side of the screen. For example, maybe your students are engaging in an activity where you want them to be able to self check their answers. Having a pull tab where the answers are hidden off the side of the screen allows students to see the questions, think about it, and pose their own answer choices before they pull out that tab to see the answer that was hidden off the side of the screen. And we're going to see today how to create those pull tabs not only in Smart Lumio, but we're also going to see how you can create them in Notebook, add so many additional features to them, and then import them into Lumio as well. So to start with, let's look at how to create pull tabs here in Lumio. I'm going to jump out of this presentation and I'm going to go into an existing Lumio and I'm going to show you an example of how pull tabs might be used here in Lumio. So in this activity, our students are asked to add with symbols. We have the key over on the left-hand side telling them how many points each symbol is worth, and then we have equations in the middle that include those symbols. So after a student has added up the equation and put their answer in the box over here on the right, they have the option to pull out a tab that will show them the teacher's answer or the answer key so that they can compare their answer with the answer key. And you'll see for the second example, it is exactly the same. We can slide that out to pull out the answer, and it's a way for students to check their own work and their understanding of the content today. So the first thing is I'm going to show you how we can duplicate this right here in Lumio. So I'm going to go ahead and click to add a new page to the lesson that we're working in here. And I can do that by clicking down here in the bottom left-hand corner. And for this particular example, I'm just going to choose a new page and a blank page. I'm not going to get super fancy. So now that I have a blank page, I'm ready to build a pull tab to go with my activity. And I'm going to do one pretty similar to what we saw up there, which is going to use a combination of shapes. The pull tab that we used a moment ago had an arrow that said pull, and then a dotted outline box that had our answer in there. So let's go back to my blank page, and up here on the toolbar, we have our shape making tool. So I'm going to double click here to create a rectangle shape. And then I can use the tools across the top here to change some of the features or the appearance of the shape itself. For example, I can choose the fill color of my shape, and I can even choose the line color around the outside. You'll notice that if you come down here to the dot dot dot, you have even more options available. I just grabbed some quick standard colors from the ones that were available without having to click into the more menu. I can even choose the line thickness around the outside of my shape, and then a feature such as making it a dotted line if I would like to do that. And then I can grab my handle and I can make this shape any size and specific shape that I need depending on the amount of content that I'm going to hide off of the screen. So I'm happy with that size right there. Now I'm going to go back to my shape making tool. I'm going to get the arrow. And once again, I have the option to change all of the features about it, although you'll see it came out looking exactly like the rectangle that I had created already. But of course, I can change the color and change the color of the dotted line if I want to kind of flip that so that one of them is red on the inside, yellow on the outside, and so on. The other thing that I'm going to want to do with this arrow, if I'm trying to replicate the example we saw, the arrow pointed to the left to indicate that the students needed to pull it out from the right-hand side and move it to the left. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate that using the handle that was on the top. It's now on the left-hand side to make that point to the left instead of pointing up. And then I'm going to stretch it out just a little bit so that it will better fit the word pull that I'm going to add here in just a moment. So now I'm going to select on my text making tool and I'm going to add a text box right over top of my shape. And if I'm using this for students to pull out the answers to check themselves, again, like the example, this is where I would type the answer to the actual problem that the students are solving. One last time, I'm going to go grab my text tool. And this time, there we go. This time I'm going to add the word pull. And then I'm going to select and I'm going to move that down and place it right on my arrow there so that the students can see that that is a handle to pull. Now, the last thing that I need to do is I need to group all of these together, because right now, if my students tried to click on the arrow to move it, you can see all they do is successfully grab the arrow and move that. I need it to treat all of these objects as though they are one. And the way that we do that in Lumio is we select on one object and then we hold down the control key. Now that's going to be in the bottom left or right of your keyboard. And we select the other objects while holding down control. So while I was holding it down, I clicked on all the other objects as well. And what you'll see is that we get a drop down that appears next to each one of our selected items. We can click on any one of those drop down menus and we're going to choose the option group. And that's going to group all of these objects together so that if we click anywhere in here, we're now moving them as one. And the way that we finish this so that it looks like our example is that we would slide it off the side of the page so that the only thing our students can see when they come to engage in the lesson is the word pull at the top of the arrow. They would select it, slide it out, and of course they would be able to read the answer that is now revealed hiding on that box that was off the side of the page. So pretty simple to set up a quick pull tab that hides an answer off the side of the page. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go see how to set up something like that in Smart Notebook. It's going to be pretty similar, but we're going to have different features available that actually make it even cooler to set it up in Notebook. So I have Notebook open down here on my laptop already, and there are just a couple of differences if we want to replicate the same thing. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to build the exact same type of pull tab here. So I'm going to start by selecting on my shape making tool, and I'm going to choose a standard rectangle again. One of the differences is that we have this extended toolbar here that allows us to choose the features of our shape before we even draw it. So for example, if I select on color, I can choose the fill color as well as the line color around the outside of my rectangle before I draw it. And then I can choose that line style. So how thick do I want the outside line to be? And do I want it to be solid or dotted? And so on with that line style. Once you've chosen all of those, you're ready to click into your workspace and drag out to draw the rectangle itself. Now, another difference between working with shapes in Smart Notebook as opposed to Lumio is that if I decided I wanted to move this shape to a different position, before I go back and I draw my arrow, for example, I can't simply click on it and move it because right now my cursor is still a shape making tool, which means any efforts to do anything else in the workspace simply result in me drawing more rectangles with those exact features. So what I need to do is turn off the shape making tool by pressing on the select tool up here before I'm ready to move on to making any additional shapes or manipulating the one that I've drawn. So now I can slide this over a little bit, go back to my shape making tool, and to find my arrow, I'm going to click the drop down to see the additional shapes that are available and choose the arrow tool. Once again, I can choose all of the features that I would like to add to this particular shape before I draw it. And then when I'm ready, I click in the workspace and I draw the arrow in whatever shape I would like it to be. Once again, I have to turn that off before I want to manipulate it. So now that I've turned off the shape making tool, I'm ready to select and rotate that arrow and slide it over so that I can group it next to the box where I'm going to hide my answer. So far, pretty similar, just a little bit different with working with the tools here inside of Notebook. Now I'm ready to select on my text tool to begin adding text. Once again, I can change all of the features of the text before I even start typing. When I'm ready, I click where I want my text box to be. And then once again, if I want to manipulate this, because I need to make it a lot smaller, I've got to turn off the text tool before I'm ready to do that. One difference with text in Notebook is that you can manually resize it simply by using the size arrow. When you resize the box that the text fits into, it resizes the text as well. So one last time, I'm going to select back on my text tool. I'm going to make that text a lot smaller before I type my word pull. Turning off my text tool, I'm ready to bring the word pull down and add it right onto my arrow. Now, another difference with Smart Notebook, in order to select all of these objects, I don't have to use the control key. I can simply place my cursor out here in the white space and draw a big old box around all of these and then let go, and it selects everything that was inside of my selection space there. Once again, I have a drop down that appears next to every single object that I've selected, and I can click on any one of those drop downs, and then I can choose the word group. Now I've treated all of these objects as one, and I'm ready to hide it off the side of the page. So far, it's been pretty similar to what we did in Lumio. But I want to take you back to our original example here in Lumio, and I want to point out one additional awesome feature that I absolutely love that you can do with things like pull tabs. So, remind you, our original pull tab was hiding off the side of the screen, and the students had the arrow here to pull it and drag it out. But I want you to notice something that I can and cannot do. If I try to move this down on the page, I cannot move it down. If I try to push it up on the page, I cannot push it up. The only direction I can move this in is left or right. And what they've done is they've taken advantage of a specific lock feature that only exists in Smart Notebook. You do not have this ability to lock here in Lumio. So for example, if I go back to the example I was creating, if I select this and go to the drop down menu, I do have a lock that exists here in Lumio, but all it does is lock the object on the page entirely. I'm trying to click and drag it, and I cannot move it at all. So I've basically made this a part of my background using the lock feature there. But if I go back to Notebook, so stay with me, I'm going back to Smart Notebook. I'm going to slide my pull tab back out. For this one, when I select it and I go to my drop down and I come down to lock, I have lots of options in addition to simply locking the object in place entirely. For example, I can lock it but allow it to be moved vertically, lock it but allow it to be moved horizontally, lock it but allow it to be moved in any direction, and even lock it but allow it to move and rotate. So I'm controlling how the students can manipulate it. I'm preventing them from doing things like deleting the object entirely, but I'm only allowing them to move it in a certain direction or a certain way or rotate it if I want to. So the example that we first saw is taking advantage of allow horizontal move. That's going to lock this object in every single way except it allows left and right movement. So if you've got 3 or 4 answer choices on the page, you know that students aren't accidentally lining up the answer for question number 1 with number 2 or number 3. They're not getting it all jumbled up because I can only pull this one out and place it next to question number 1. So an amazing option there, especially for our younger learners, to control how they're manipulating those pull tabs when you use them. So I highly recommend, if that feature is useful to you, build it in Smart Notebook. If I've built it in Notebook, how do I now get it into Lumia? Well, you've got a couple of options from here. You can build your entire lesson here in Notebook. You can put all of your symbols on the page that and the answer key that the students are going to use to build the math problem. You can do all of that here in Notebook, or you could simply have that pull tab ready to go. Maybe I need to duplicate this before. I'm going to unlock it here, and then I'm going to duplicate this or clone it so that I can do a second one. And I'm going to slide this one down on the page into a different position. I'm going to select on the first one and do the lock but allow horizontal. Select on the second one and do the lock but allow horizontal. And then I'm not going to add anything else here in Notebook. I'm just going to import this into Lumio. So the way that we do that is we're going to save this as a file, just like working with any other desktop application. I'm going to do a save as. And I'm actually going to put this right on my desktop because it'll make it super easy to find here in a moment. And I'm going to name this pull tab example and click save. Now I'm going to go back to my Lumio lesson. And I have a couple of options. I could pull that in brand new if I were starting a new file, or I can add it right here in this existing file that I'm working in. And to do that, I would click down here on my plus sign in the bottom left, and I would choose Import Resource. I'm going to import from my computer, and I'm going to find that right where I saved it there on my desktop. So I'm going to choose my pull tab example and choose Open. It's going to take it just a moment to read that file and find all of the pages in it. If I had multiple pages, I'd be able to select all of them. I have one simple page here, so I'm going to choose Add. And now you'll see I have my pull tabs ready to go. I cannot move them down on the page. I can't move them up. The only thing I can do is push them off the side of the screen here. And now I can go through and I can build the rest of my lesson. So I could add text if I had problems I wanted them to solve. We can bump up the size of that text some here, stretch it out. We can add in a block for them to put their answer, drag that up here, and stretch it out depending on what's going to be in that answer field. And then we even have the ability to do things like lock the question on the page, lock the answer box on the page. Again, this is all going to prevent my students from accidentally manipulating those. And the only thing they would be able to do is move the pull tab out. Now, this is an important thing to notice because it was the first thing I put on the page. It's coming out behind the other objects on the page, which means when I add these before I lock them, I'm going to want to do the order and send them to the back. And that's going to make sure that they are behind what I had added with my pull tab there. So now you can see that my answer comes out here on top of that block where the students are going to put their answer. So a couple of steps there to building your own pull tabs, especially if you choose to do it in Notebook and take advantage of that lock, but allow it to move. One last thing that I want to show you inside of Notebook, and that is the ready-made pull tabs. If you are new to using Smart Notebook, you may not be familiar with a tool here known as the gallery. And that is this little picture of a landscape in a frame here on the left-hand side. When I select on that, it shows me that I have a gallery of items, most of which are pictures or images available here inside of Notebook. And up here at the top in my search box, if I type in the words pull tab, you'll see that they have lots of ready-made pull tabs here under the pictures folder. So they've got not only a basic blue pull that would allow you to group that with any object that you wanted to and pull that onto the page, but they have entire tabs completely built for you that actually give you the instructions right here on the tab. It tells you in order to use this, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to ungroup it. So you go to the drop down, you choose group, ungroup, and now you have an editable text box where you type your answer here. You're going to want to select those again, group them together. So right back to my drop down, choose group. And now I have a pull tab ready to go with my answer hidden off the side of the page. And I didn't even have to take the time to draw the rectangles, draw the arrows, and add all the additional features there. So some ready-made pull tabs in Smart Notebook if you're going to use this as a feature. Let's go back to our presentation. And let's wrap up by talking about some different ways that you could use pull tabs. Well, obviously, we just showed the example of using them to hide answers off the side of the page, but you could use them to hide instructions. That way, you're not taking up valuable workspace in your Smart Lumio or Notebook lesson. You've got instructions hidden off the side of the page. The students pull them out, they read them, they push them off the side of the page again so that they can get into the activity. And if they forget what they're supposed to do, they can always grab that pull tab and bring it right back out again. You can use it to hide examples. If students are unclear about what they're supposed to do, you can have a teacher example or exemplar hidden off the side of the page that the students can view before they get into building their own. Images and context clues are great for our emerging readers. I've seen activities where teachers have a bunch of words or terms on the page, things like paper clips and buttons and pens and pencils. And if the students are unclear of what a paperclip actually looks like, they can actually click on the word paperclip, drag it over to the left or right, and an image of a paperclip is attached to it and will pop out with it. Similarly, you can use it for color examples. If you have words on the page like blue, red, green, you can have each of those attached to a shape that shows that color so that the students can clarify what you mean or remind themselves. I've seen this done with rhyming words, or things like synonyms and antonyms could all be attached to the words that the students are choosing from. You can even hide things like hints, extension activities, and guiding questions to help your students complete your lesson. So I hope this has revived an old teacher favorite tool. The pull tab is such a multitasking tool that is available in Smart Notebook, but also in Lumio. Where you build it will determine how many features you can apply to that pull tab, things like locking it on the horizontal or vertical plane. Super cool for keeping your students from getting frustrated. If you have any questions about this vodcast or anything else instructional technology related, contact your OIT teacher specialist or ask your school's e-coach. Thanks, everybody.